All right, well, hello and good evening. I had considered whether or not to um, dress for the occasion, but this is not an occasion that merits professional attire. And I love thinking about the fact that you need to see your politicians in a more touchable and reachable manner. And you need to see our humanity. And you see that I show you mine on a regular basis because, truthfully, my humanity is not separate from my professional rigor. And whether I am wearing, and you know I come through, whether I come through or not, my standards are the same. And even if where I'm being casual or even being playfully bougie hood, still yet my standards are the same. The professional rigor is still there. Okay, so here I am. It's 9 o'clock. It's that time where most of you should be relaxing at home. I know some of you may work second shift outside of your homes, and some of you may work second shift in your homes right now, virtually. But, I thought that this would be a decent time. I'm actually still enjoying my dinner. I hope that you have had a wonderful week thus far. I hope that all is well. I do also want to say just a bit of a caveat. I too have been made aware of Duke Energy's recent notification to the masses that failure to pay by this Friday will result in disconnection. So I will be looking into that further on tomorrow. Okay? All right. So. Oh, she can cook just like she can dress. I'm unrivaled, or well, I can't say completely unrivaled. I'm merely unrivaled with putting together a look in the political arena. Of course, the radiant, beautiful, exceptional, phenomenal Michelle Obama. That's unrivaled in fashion, and the way she puts together her looks and the sophistication, just absolute excellence. We all concur there. Even the haters know. They just don't want to admit it. Okay, so we are doing a follow-up to the vaccine research, okay? And I'm thinking I'll post some links tomorrow or tonight, depending on my final activities before I go to bed, my final task. And remember, if you ever have questions, this is not intended to be a talking at you session. This is intended to be hyper interactive, okay? I want you to join in. I want you to let me know that you're there. I want you to wave. I want you to respond. I want you to comment, even when, quote unquote, no response is necessary or seemingly appropriate. I want you to interact with me. This is not a conversation where, it's not a monologue. This is a dialogue. And where you may have specific questions, I want you to be able to get those questions answered in real time, because I'm not a pretend scientist. So I don't need preparation to answer every question as it relates to scientists, because I've put in the work. Okay. Oh goodness. Well, see, you see my humanity, and we've all done it, right? We've all done it, but thankfully I'm a lady and I was able to keep that in. Woo, hilarious. Okay, so Johnson & Johnson, you recall me making mention of that. And let me and just give the 3 things that I told you that I would give on each live session for maybe the next 4 sessions. And then I'm going to stop giving the preface because the preface should not be necessary. These opening statements, I'm not about elevator speeches. If you've attended any political events for which I was a speaker, albeit in the capacity of a vying candidate or otherwise, I don't like sound bites. Yes, they're cute, like trademarks, so I can create a trademark all day long, but I would like to not have them in the same category as sound bites, because we know generally that sound bites are intended to pacify, to deceive whomever the audience is. So I don't want my trademarks to be likened to that. Excuse me. Nonetheless, because I realize that there will be new people joining in each and every week, and I thank you immensely from the bottom of my professional and personal heart. I want to ensure that as we go along this process, that as we're getting to know one another, that you see that I'm exactly who I say I am, that when we get further along in this process and I run for higher and higher office, that you can say, okay, this is inconsistent with how Tigress rolls, or this is consistent with how Tigress rolls. The reason why it's necessary to establish this now is because you see that I have had great, I've experienced great libel and confusion and rumorment as it relates to who I am truthfully, right? So, who I am truthfully. My name is Tigress Sydney Acute McDaniel. You can find out more information by reading my biography at www.ctigressrun.com. All of my social media for my political platform is at ctigressrun. I do not have any other political platforms other than those directly attached to C Tigress Run. And it's not even directly attached. It is the handle C Tigress Run. Okay. There will not, I was going to say will not ever, but let me just say this. I prefer to speak for myself. I'm relatively good at it, wouldn't you say? Okay. And so it is very, very highly unlikely that I will ever have or allow anyone to speak on my behalf, especially until we have it well established that you all can very simply distinguish what is characteristic of Tigress as opposed to what is not characteristic of Tigress. Until that time, oh yeah, you need to hear it from my mouth, okay? All right, so I am 43. I know I look much younger, and I established that not to somehow, tout my age and my quote-unquote, youthful looks or whatever. Instead, I'm saying this because I'm signifying that I am old enough to have the degrees that I have, or old enough to be in a position of advanced academia and pursuing the degrees that I'm pursuing. Okay? All right. There we go. All right. And mind you, I graduated at 17, just so you're aware. Okay. So I have a bachelor's of science in agricultural education and environmental science. Okay. I've also been able to find more documents, even though I have the documentation, as far as like the degree. to show you explicit designation of the interdisciplinary programs that I have consistently taken in each one of my academic degree programs that is unrivaled. And the reason why I said this is unrivaled, because in my respective colleges, for which, of course, you know, you have your degree programs there under, right? There has been the option to double major, or the option to have interdisciplinary programs. And of course, you have to go through a approval process for pursuing a larger course load of coursework, pursuing a double major. And these are things that I have done consistently. I'm saying this to you because I want you to fully appreciate that I really, really take my academia seriously. I take running for office seriously. I take the scope of work that is entailed with that very seriously. So that I'm hoping to signify by letting you know this, that I will conduct myself as a politician the same way that I conducted myself as a student. And that lets you know that I'm going to put in the work, and it's not necessarily the physical hard labor that may be required, but the cognitive, the deliberate effort to search out a thing, to research statutes that are applicable, to be honest with you, to research matters that may be on topic for different diverse communities, and not just as it relates to African Americans and white Americans, because there's wonderful diversity, and there is also, each community has its own individual set of specific hurdles and things that they need resolution on. So I will delve into that unceasingly. I have an insatiable appetite for getting to the bottom of something. And not so much as that it's like, oh, I got all the answers. No, but at least I love the idea of being sufficiently informed. And I'm a proponent that unless you are sufficiently informed, you can't resolve a problem efficiently, nor permanently. And even where, the permanence issue is something that we reach toward, and, that happens over time, you can't even intelligibly attempt to resolve a problem for which you have not considered all parameters, considered all potential issues, much like the SWOT and strategic implementation planning, which you've all heard me refer to as SIP. And you know that I have doctoral level expertise in that field as well. Okay, so nonetheless, I have a master's degree, Master's of Science, Bachelor's of Science. The Master's of Science is in Agricultural Economics and Rural Development, and of course, my specialization is wetland bioremediation and swine husbandry, same as undergrad, okay? And then my PhD program, I am what you call a PhD ABD. You know what the acronym PhD means. ABD means all but dissertation. Yes, I am exceedingly ready to graduate. That is a complete understatement. But I am dealing with some hurdles that have presented themselves due to COVID and some political conflict that you've heard me share. And I am staying the course. And so I am hopeful that my final defense can be had still yet this semester. But I'll keep you all fully informed on that progress, because I literally have nothing else to do. All right. I do have Masters of Fine Arts coursework at the graduate level at the University of Louisville. Also acting experience, theater, classically trained experience through their Black repertory. And I'm very proud to say that, humbly proud to say that I have held lead roles in their theatrical performances, and it was very, very exciting. Okay, I have other academia as well, but this gives you, this tells you a little bit about who I am. So science is my absolute first love. I have pursued economics because I realized that scientists, are often not, we're invited to the meeting. We're always invited to the meeting, but they don't want to hear really, and when I say they, the decision makers, the primary decision makers really don't want to hear from the scientists. You see that more and more even in the government sector, right? And now, of course, for those government entities that are science, that have science at their core, it may be a little different, but you know what I'm referring to, the contrast that I'm making. And so basically what I'm getting at is that generally speaking, economists are, their input is more favored. So I decided that I needed to be able to speak economics fluently, right? Okay, and then fast forward, my pursuit of law is equally on that same subject matter. We know that law is very, very important to the transformative leadership and reform that we are seeking. So there you go. Hopefully that tells you a little bit about myself. Hopefully it signifies who I am, what I do, and what I stand for. All the other specifics on issues, and I use the quotations because oftentimes at political events, what people really want to know is, what is your view on the issues? And the issues would be things like equity and reparations and Native American demarginalization, LGBT community, LGBTQ plus community rights, healthcare. I feel like I'm forgetting something right now. Fracking and environmental implements and things like that. Okay, so you can find all that information at www.ctigressrun.com. All right, so let's jump into this right now. All right, so vaccine research, where are we at? We are at 925. I got you covered here. All right, so Johnson & Johnson had a study, and they have suspended that study. And guess why they suspended that study? Because of an unknown illness that one of their participants, human subjects, contracted during the course of these trials. This is exactly, if you tuned in to the part 1 of this vaccine research vid, then you know, wow, there's some validity there. Tigress just said that why are we having such an issue? Everybody wants to know, why don't we have a vaccine? Even I want to know. But in that specific regard, I can answer that question. I can answer the most likely, the most reasonable and likely issue that they're having right now is, of course, the express fact that their test participants are humans. And there is a higher standard, and appropriately so, for studies that would have humans as subjects, as opposed to my field, where generally I could have lab animals, and of course, we've had them in the past, and this is not to get PETA, in an uproar, but we do still have studies with agricultural meat production, animals who are not, used for meat production and just used for other agricultural purposes. We can use those. Oftentimes we can isolate, grow, and kill bacterium, and nobody cares. You don't care if you have absolutely no, I want to say the word, the slang that everybody said, no F's whatsoever. Does anybody care that nor my lab students, nor my scientist colleagues, nor my supervisors in the past, or the lab leads, nobody cares how often we isolate, grow, and kill bacterium. We do it very frequently throughout the semester, and nobody cares. We are properly focused on the health and safety of humans, especially where they would volunteer to effectually test chemical compounds or live biological agents, which is what a vaccine is, and there is no specificity that is sure. So this is why. And I did not intend to speak this up, which is really, really strange, because sometimes, how when you say you talk things up, or you speak on a matter, and then you ironically you hear about it days later. That same phenomenon, I don't know if you've ever had it, where you maybe you bought a new car, you never really paid attention to Saturns on the road, and now you have a Saturn Ion, let's say. And now that you have it, you see it everywhere. Well, it's always been there. I'm pretty sure Neil deGrasse Tyson or some wonderfully experienced psychiatrists and psychologists could explain that phenomenon, but they've always been there. And equally, you've heard about them, but they have not really been as important to you, and I hate to say that, but it's the truth. Even to me, on occasion, because maybe the drugs that were being tested were not important to you. Maybe it was for diabetes, and you don't have diabetes, and maybe nor do you have any family members who have suffered from or lived successfully with diabetes. Or in this case, of course, suffered, because the drug would be relative. You understand what I'm saying? So, or vice versa, because there could be commentary on either end. But the point I'm making here is that it's always been there. This has always been an issue for research, policy, law, standards, for which there are an absolute need for human as study participants. Yes, we can test vaccines. Well, no, because that would be like interspecies, genetics, and there would be some funkiness there, that wouldn't work necessarily, so it wouldn't be viable. It wouldn't be a viable nor valid methodology to, use a mouse and test a vaccine for coronavirus on the mouse. Now, mind you, some of you are not aware of this as well, and I'm glad we're having this conversation for this reason as well. I need to reiterate to some of you, because I've already iterated to you, and then the other ones, other individuals, please be advised, your animals can contract the coronavirus, okay? It may not be all animals, okay? We're talking about your household domesticated pets. Even our avian specialists, recall Asa and his bird, what is it, the budgie, okay, he could contract the coronavirus, and she made us very, very clear on that, so that if we had intended to maybe take him out with us, out and about, that we'd be very mindful of that, of that real possible occurrence. I believe that a lot of you need to have that understanding as well, because it's not clear that you do, considering the fact that I know that, we have service animals, and I understand that beyond measure. I do. But there's one example where we've seen the commercial where, and I know Chick-fil-A and nor the pet owner, I don't think they had intentions of subjecting and exposing the dog to COVID, but it can be a very real outcome. And that's not even so much as my science, even though, general animal science, I have, excuse me, not only a working knowledge of, but expert as it relates to swine husbandry, right? And in some cases that's applicable, just generally so for physiological processes, right? Okay, so let's pull up. We're going to talk about Trump and the vaccine that he's been purportedly given, right? And his purporting that he is now immune. And then I also want to talk to you about the vitamin intake. I want to be very, very candid in this regard as well. And we've got a lot of time. You think that 30 minutes is a lot of time? It's a lot of time. We're going to be able to cover a lot of ground. So again, if you have any questions, this is the time to ask, okay? And I'm jumping around. I've got my little notes here. So, all right. Let's see. So we've covered a good segue from the last video. We know why vaccine research is hard. I gave you two main reasons, right? The main reason is that we have human subjects. The second reason is what? If you joined me last week, then you know it's because this is new. And it's microbiology, and even where virologists and geneticists and microbiologists and scientists in fields for which all of those sciences or one of those sciences is core, like me, right? It is still undiscovered territory where there may be not a mutation, but a new strain, right? So it has to be studied to see how it behaves, and to be premature and effectually arrogant in assuming its behavior based upon previous strains, it can be extremely detrimental to not only one's, human health, but how it translates into the viability of future strains. Okay? All right. So, let's go here. All right. If you are with me and you were not aware of the Johnson & Johnson study, please just Google it. And all right, so good gracious. Now, I think this is really cool. So what they have is a pausing rule. And the pausing rule is self-explanatory. It's exactly what I've already explained. And if they find that, their patients have, some type of odd presentation of symptoms, and in this case, an unexplained illness, then they can pause the study, right? All right, so okay, and I spoke about the International Research Board. I'm trying to make sure I don't miss anything because they're still not releasing specific information. So it's still going to be a matter that I'll need to really delve into even further. Now, I'm going to continue on and move ahead in the topics because I wanted to discuss Breonna Taylor's case. Excuse me. And there are some interesting parallels and connections there as it relates to my previous stay in Louisville, Kentucky, and ownership of a restaurant. And so it's been very interesting to kind of dissect that matter, and I really want to share that with you. And I'm hoping that that will be an interactive conversation because, as I often do sometimes, I will be presenting completely new ideas. Not so much as theories, at this point. Definitely, I don't present any conspiracy theories. Because if it could happen viably, then it's not a conspiracy. It's not a conspired theory. It's just based, you're using the information that you have, and it basically is. It really is a scientific method that you're going through the steps to weed out truth from lies, and and there you have it. And so your analysis, or then you can make recommendations on that analysis, and that's pretty much what I'm doing here. But I did speak to you about the International Research Board, similar to that. So that exists for universities, for students like myself in a PhD program or a master's program even. And on that thesis work, they have research, and that research, the scope of their research must be approved by a board, and this board is in place for what? Checks and balances, and to ensure the safety and health of participants, right? Especially where we're talking about human participants. So they're under that pausing rule, or the body that handles it. They have an independent committee, which they call a safety monitoring board. So these boards can have different names, but they're effectually serving the same purpose, right? To protect the participants from any harm during the course of the study, okay? So if you have more information about this that I don't have, some of you might be lab scientists or technicians and you're working in certain areas, please do chime in. So really want to know more. Let's see. Yeah, I thought I would look one more place. Yeah, and they're just making mention that they're still handling other research for other chronic conditions, like asthma, and like in the case for my son, you've heard me say it before, eosinophilic esophagitis, EOE, right? So they have also used the pausing rule, and they paused the study on AstraZeneca as well. So this is not uncommon. It's just that it seems alarming, and it seems odd, and it definitely seems Twilight Zone and very sci-fi too, and I mean weirdly and terrifyingly so, right? Only because this is not commonplace. Where like it's not part of your everyday. It's commonplace for scientists and researchers, you know, to at least have a working knowledge, but it is not. If you don't work in this field, you don't really have a good working knowledge of this field or sufficient information to understand it. So yeah, it seems cuckoo crazy. So you're absolutely merited in your confusion and being alarmed and being disgusted. And at the very least, whether you understand particular ideology or concepts or technical application in my field or that of geneticists or that of virologists, you still commonsensically understand that the government has failed us. And that's, you know, and I say that holistically. Yes, we do have an issue with the president, and that's another thing that I wanted to make mention to you will be another topic. So it'll be Breonna Taylor next. Then next will be, conservatives or, you know, and or blacks for Trump. And then we can, you know, hit that topic as well. And I think it will be very, very important for us to do a really in-depth review of fiduciary duty of our government officials, the House, the Senate, Congress as a whole, both historically and in emerging times, and really understand the full role and scope of privy that the president enjoys, and compare and contrast that with the privy and scope and fiduciary duty expected from Congress as a whole, and then separately the Senate and the House of Representatives. If you don't have a sufficient understanding of how that all works, then you can very easily and erroneously apply all of the liability to Trump. And maybe you do have express knowledge and you still want to, we want to blame Trump. I'm okay with that. I'm on that. Look, I'm on that train or whatever. But realistically, we can't just blame Trump. And I wanted to go over, and I'm going to stop here because that's such a very interesting subject, because the other day we were having a conversation on the percentage, ethnic percentage breakdown of our Congress. And I believe we're at the 116th Congress. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Let me just check on one. Yeah, I want to say 16. I'm not sure. I feel like I might. Maybe it's 118. Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. Okay. 116th Congress. It's important that you know these things. It really is. And it's important that you know the county breakdown, the district breakdown for your particular metropolitan or small town rural areas. It's important that you know the capacity and scope of work, and basically what does the county, the Board of County Commissioners do? What authority do they have? What have they been empowered to do by the state legislature, and how that relates to your everyday life, or the issues that are important to you, or the issues that are important to your community, or your ethnic community, your gender community, your belief system community, all those things, okay? So we're going to go over that. That'll be third in line after this, okay? All right, so let's jump back over here. All right, boom, 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 boom. So Trump's vaccine. So remember hearing about I'm not, well, how should I say this? Dr. Fauci is indisputably an expert in this field, right? And when someone of that capacity gives a very specific diagnosis and even states specifically the amount of days that a reversal can be seen in Trump, amidst him having been administered this vaccine, and then promulgating that he's somehow now altogether immune. You have to listen to someone like that, okay? So it's just like if I told you something about wetlands, or if LeBron tells you a very specific, fact about exercise, the physical science of exercise. Those are the times that you want to listen. Not so much as because those people are perfect and better than you, but they have done this. This is their regular course of activity, course of professional activity. So they might have a bit of insight, okay? So that will be my first thing to say, since I am not a virologist. That would be my first thing to say before I get into elaborating on what I perceive during this time. I've already told you before that I believe very strongly, and again, this is just for those of you who are just joining this particular vid. If you are sick, and we've all been there, right? And I'm not talking about that you're terminally ill. You can have a cold and feel absolutely terrible, and even look terrible. We all feel like because we do. We generally look different. I don't think anybody has been absolutely radiant and glowing and, and just looking their absolute best when they're feeling under the weather. And yet still, you've had events that you've had to attend, and we're just regular lay people, right? For the most part, right? And what do? You pull it together. You put on a brave face, right? And you go into work, and let's say you have a presentation to make. You stand in front of your peers and you make that presentation, and you do it, and you do it well, right? And then time to clock out, and what do? You conk out, right? And you slide into your comfy PJs or whatever, and you slather on, some Vicks. Take your Mucinex or take your NyQuil. You got your big old thing of tissues, and you just look sad and pathetic, baby. Sad and pathetic. We've all been there. So I think that this is what's going on in the case of Trump, okay? But more specifically, what vaccine did he take, right? And why don't we have it? Okay. Let's see. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I don't know if y'all remember Pfizer. Okay. It's one of the big pharma companies. And they generally have human subjects. They are of interest as it relates to the vaccine that Trump has taken. And the wild part about this is that this is the reason why I needed more time to really delve into what he's taking. There's not a lot of information out here for it. And there is scant FDA review. And even where there is review, there are heightened concerns. Okay, and we know, so the hydroxychloroquine and the convalescent plasma, these, we already know those are not things that would actually be readily approved by the FDA. Hold on one second, because I had it pulled up, and now, and if I have to, I'll go over about 5 minutes, because we're at 9:53. Hang in there with me. And if you have any questions, this is the time. Please do ask. I also feel very strongly that they may be pumping him with vitamin B12, which is a very common practice for high-profile people and their doctors. And then we see things like what was administered to Michael Jackson. These things will give an immediate facade of wellness. And so combine that with a vaccine that is still yet under trial. Maybe what we're seeing is just a boost to his immune system, as opposed to, and I mean like an expert, elite boost to his immune system, as opposed to the viability of this, of this vaccine that he's touting. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, so I don't know if you looked this up, but of course they have Operation Warp Speed. And of course this is an effort to get a COVID-19 vaccine, ready to go and in the veins of the people ASAP, because until that is done, a lot of people are questioning, well, when can we get back to normal? And the scientists all repetitively say, and the experts, even where they are not maybe the research scientists, and maybe they are sociologists or anthropologists, so they study the history of civilization, and all the aspects they're under. These individuals are saying, hey, we've seen pandemics, we know the pattern, and absent a viable vaccine, these safety measures will be absolutely necessary. I concur 1000%. And you heard me say in the very beginning, actually prior to warnings by other people, actually I'm going to be that person, and I'm going to tell you to go back into your social media archives, and I want you to look up who was suggesting that you wear a mask and who was suggesting that you didn't need a mask at all. And I was absolutely out there flailing. I was out there like, yo, no. I literally felt like I was in like slow motion. I was tweeting CNN, even to the extent of some of my family members like, no, we see you, and we want to send you a text and say fall back, but we know you're not gonna fall back, because they know, hell no, I'm not gonna fall back. You're killing me. No, put your mask on. No, put it back on, and then get a lot of masks, and don't wear that thin shit. No, don't wear that. I could have told you that many. And if you were gonna wear something thin, Mind you, you should be wearing, you need to consult someone like myself. In the beginning, when I was looking for appropriate masks, because I was not going to wear the paper mask. I'm still concerned about the N95 mask. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I understand the filtration, but I'd much rather just breathe natural air, even though our air is not absolutely perfect. I'd much rather breathe the natural air, of course, coupled with my wonderful tea tree or lavender or peppermint combinations that I put in my mask. Hey friends, get with it. Then breathe the kind of chemical treatment that is standard for the N95 mask, and even some of the paper, kind of hospital masks, as we have become to basically know them as, we affectionately refer to them as hospital masks. I don't like them because I don't want, there's three main reasons. So number one, and this is on topic with the vaccine, so just follow with me. But number one, they are the integrity of the construction, the integrity of the construction is generally poor. It's generally single use, you know what I mean? So, and that's what I mean by poor. So let me clarify. It's not poor for the single use. It's poor for repeated use. And considering the fact that I knew early on, we're going to need this on a regular basis, then going to those masks was pointless. Now, do I have a stock of, look, don't come knocking on my door. Do I have a stock of various options of masks? Absolutely. All right. Number two, like I said, I don't want it to be synthetically treated. And that is definitely going to be par for the course when you buy standardized PPE. It just is what it is. So I don't want that. So I want to be able to have something that is, therefore, it would have to be thicker if it's going to be untreated, and machine washable, because I want to be able to add my Good Witch ingredients into the wash and make sure that it is sanitized and disinfected to my standards. And I guess I can go over, we can have that conversation maybe fourth in line in that regard as well. And then number three, and you can call me vain if you want to. I don't care. I don't care. If this is going to be a lifestyle, which I've told you is going to be a lifestyle, and you saw my progression. If you saw the first mask I was wearing, what did it look like? Let's see how many of you know. If you're going to, anybody going to respond, or you type it in later, who knows? Okay. The initial mask that I was wearing was a paint mask, PPE. Okay. Why? Because you have particulate matter that is at issue in VOCs and other, just inhaled toxins, the potentiality for that when you're painting. So, and since some of you know that I also have that as part of my professional corporation, it was very readily available to me, where the N95 mask and the hospital mask were not as readily available because demand was high and supply was low, right? Okay. And then I even treated those masks, even though they were treated, right? And normally chlorine-based treatment, right? Even though they didn't have some potent smell of chlorine, okay? And then the next progression was, okay, I've got my hands on a couple of N95s, which a lot of us were doing because a lot of us were being able to buy them by, people purporting that they had, verified, N95 mask at the flea market or, elsewhere. Some of the stores are starting to have them, like Target, I believe, was one of the first, even Walmart. And then I was like, okay, I still need to find something on, for longevity's sake. And boom, the last reason is vanity, right? I want to be able, both psychologically, and I think that and I'm gonna push this. I believe very strongly, even though I know that some of you are not even wanting to embrace a vanity mask, okay? Because that's what it would be called, like a vanity cup. You know what I mean? Instead of getting a coffee cup that's just a coffee cup, you get a coffee cup that has a design. That's all that means as far as terminology. I wanted a vanity mask. I wanted to work properly. I wanted to protect me. But psychologically, if you, it can be a hard adoption process, and conceptualizing that this could be more long term than you understand its need to be, which will likely be well into 2021. I perceive that it will persist until after summer 2021, but I, like you, hopefully you're thinking this, and like other people who are hopeful, we do hope that, that there is a viable vaccine before that time, and that we can kind of go back to normal. But I guarantee you these are going to be masks that I keep, and I strongly suggest, and I have iterated and reiterated, I strongly suggest that you do the same. So on that topic, again, psychologically, I'm just telling you, I think that you would do well if you were to embrace a few vanity masks yourself. Then that way it wouldn't seem so much like a regimen, and it wouldn't seem so much like, complacency, and, kind of like the Lego movie, mindless, Americans just doing as told by big brother government, and we really have no freedom. You would feel less like that, in my opinion, if you actually wore a vanity mask. A mask that shows your individuality, that maybe even your protest of everything that's going on. We've seen the Black Lives Matter mask, and they're beautiful. Maybe you want to wear a mask that says "fuck Trump." I'm here for it. I'm okay with it. I'm probably not going to buy one. Doubtful. Yeah, doubtful. But because I don't want his name anywhere around me like that on a regular basis. I see it, it's going to piss me off. Even if it says fuck and Trump, I still don't want to see Trump. I've had enough. And you already know that I don't attend shit shows, so there you have it. But yeah, that would be important as well. This is all on topic with the vaccine. There's not a lot of information that we have that helps us with fully understanding what he is purporting. I'm going to continue to dive into it. And I'm going to check just one more time to see if there's been any change in Google Scholar as far as what he's taken. Give me a second here. And you can, and I've suggested this before, you can, it's readily available to everyone. It's, like I said, it's Google Scholar. You don't need a subscription. You don't need any academic clearance. You don't need to be a student and put in your ID. None of this stuff exists. And you can just type in Google Scholar, and just like you would search anything else, you just enter keywords and search basically scholastic material for verifiable information on studies and high-level technical topics, and oftentimes the language is something that you can understand, and if you can't understand it at first glance, I'm a strong advocate for a dictionary And yes, I understand that the dictionary alone is not going to help you to 100% understand different technical applications in science. But come on, friends, give it a whirl. You are brilliant and wonderfully made, so you can tackle a couple of these articles and really delve into the topics that concern you, and instead of being led to and fro with these conspiracy theories, you can just go and get some verifiable information, and and then plan for your future. Plan your life based on at least information from experts, where you can get sufficient information, compare and contrast, right? All right, so again, let's see what I'm getting here. Yeah, and actually it's funny because there are significant articles, and you would think that it wouldn't make it to this point, but it has. Especially where politics, we try to keep it, separate from the scope of research, so that there is high stronghold to ethical rigor, honesty in research and not research fraud, as you've even heard Dr. Fauci kind of allude to. But what I'm getting at is that Trump is in all of these articles on topic with regards to the CDC and the Human Health and Safety, HSS, and HHS and FDA, and vaccines of so many different types, and issues with their him not believing the science or any of that. And then that's why it's so especially interesting that all of a sudden he seemingly has been sold on this one vaccine, and seemingly immune thereafter, after taking it. But yeah, so that's what I'm believing. I believe that what's going on is he's receiving expert care. You've heard me say this before. He's got unlimited resources. It's actually statutory, right? In his empowerment, he's supposed to receive that level of care, and you heard him speak about it. And I told you this weeks ago, and he's touting it at the fundraiser events and political campaign events that he's facilitating. He's doing exactly what I'm telling you he's doing. So, and I don't even think, again, that it is the vaccine itself. I think it is the expert doses of, B12, and because they'll do a running drip. We don't have that privy, and I can't even imagine what the cost of that is. I'll have to look that up. I wonder what the cost of something like that would be. You've seen it even in the entertainment world, where some of your favorite entertainers, and they have received a B12 drip, and they have to be there like pretty much all day long. But they basically just give them, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something that is so chemically altered. B12, we know that to be, a very generic nutrient, but in administered expertly, it can mean the world of difference. And so I think that's what's going on, as opposed to just this miracle vaccine that only Trump has. Because if it was so miraculous, then we should be able to see that in the research, in the documents. It would definitely already be published. There's no way that it would not be published in a journal, an academic, based journal. They may even at this point be eligible for a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, come on, friends. So there are definitely some gaps, okay? And so I've gone over 11 minutes, but I wanted to make sure to give you your money's worth, because I spoke in the beginning about the preface that I had decided to give you each time I go live. So I guess I'll be doing like 1 hour, 15 minutes each time, just so that I can make sure that whoever's jumping into this this platform with me, who I am, what I'm about, and what I intend to do. and my track record in getting things done. All right. So that's it. That's all I got, friends. That's all I got. I got what you got at this point. I don't think we're going to get any more information. I think it's going to, it's necessarily not just going to be fluid for anyone outside of the actual research team. And that's for privacy and confidentiality reasons, right? Some of it bad, some of it driven unethically, and some of it driven ethically. But mostly driven ethically, because most of scientific research, I would hope, as a scientist, even though I don't know, I don't have express knowledge in everybody's facility, every lab. I would be lying to you if I told you that every lab across the country was held high ethical rigor. But generally, the field of research that would entail human subjects does. So we all have to wait and watch. I like the term ya verás, which is Spanish for wait and see. And we all wait and see. As I get more information, I will incorporate it in my weekly vids. And that's all we got. So again, all of my well wishes to you, as I normally send to you. And no matter what, I don't care what nobody tell you, friends. Tigress said what? Tigress said what? Tigress said, protect your neck. All right, y'all have a good night.